Imagine a world where intelligence isn't measured by how much you know, but by how you live. The Greek Stoics, revered for their profound insights into human nature, believed that the line separating wisdom and foolishness wasn't defined by education, wealth, or power. It was defined by character. In their eyes, a stupid person wasn't necessarily uneducated, but someone who failed to align their thoughts and actions with reason, virtue, and the natural flow of life. Now think about the people you encounter daily. How often do you see impulsive decisions, arrogance masquerading as confidence, or individuals blaming the world for their problems? These behaviors aren't just frustrating, they're signs of what the Stoics would consider a deeper flaw, a failure to live a life guided by reason and virtue. In this video, we'll explore 6 signs of a stupid person through the lens of Stoic philosophy, uncovering how these traits derail us from true happiness and inner peace. Along the way, we'll reflect on how to avoid these pitfalls ourselves, transforming ignorance into wisdom and impulsiveness into mindful action. Let's delve into the wisdom of the ancients and discover how their teachings can illuminate our path in the modern world. 1. Stupidity as ignorance. There's an old story about a man named Midas who, despite his wealth and power, lacked a fundamental understanding of what truly mattered in life. Obsessed with the idea of turning everything he touched into gold, Midas believed this power would bring him happiness. But in his ignorance, he didn't realize the gift he sought would also rob him of life's essentials: his food, his loved ones, even his ability to simply exist without suffering. Midas's downfall wasn't a lack of intelligence, it was his inability to see what was truly good for him. This is the essence of ignorance as described in Stoic philosophy. To the Stoics, ignorance isn't about a lack of knowledge, it's about a lack of wisdom. It's the failure to discern what is good, what is bad, and what lies indifferent in the grand scheme of life. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, warned that most people wander through life chasing shadows, mistaking fleeting pleasures for genuine fulfillment and external success for inner peace. But what does this look like in modern life? Imagine someone consumed by the relentless pursuit of social media fame, spending hours curating their online persona to gain likes and followers. On the surface, they appear successful, even admired. Yet beneath the surface, they're caught in a never-ending cycle of comparison and validation, unaware that their happiness is chained to something as fragile as public opinion. This, the Stoics would argue, is ignorance in action, a misalignment between what truly matters and what merely distracts us. Ignorance also manifests in the way we react to life's challenges. When faced with difficulty, do we seek to understand and grow, or do we blame the world for our misfortune? Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." The ignorant person, however, overlooks this truth. They externalize their problems, failing to see that their peace lies within their ability to respond wisely, not in controlling the uncontrollable. So how do we escape this trap? The Stoics teach us to cultivate self-awareness, to pause and ask, am I pursuing what is truly good or am I chasing illusions? Wisdom begins with questioning our assumptions, challenging our impulses, and aligning our actions with nature, the rational, virtuous order of the universe. And while none of us are immune to ignorance, the key is to remain vigilant. Socrates famously said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." This isn't a call to despair, but to humility. By recognizing our limitations, we open the door to growth, learning, and ultimately a life of purpose. But ignorance doesn't exist in isolation. It often gives rise to something equally destructive: impulsiveness. If ignorance is the failure to see clearly, impulsiveness is the reckless act of charging ahead without thought. In the next segment, we'll explore how Stoicism helps us tame this impulsive nature and replace it with deliberate, rational action. Impulsiveness. Picture this: a man is walking down a crowded street when someone accidentally bumps into him. In a split second, without pausing to think, he shouts, "Watch where you're going!" His voice echoes and heads turn. The person who bumped into him apologizes politely, but the damage is done. The man feels a rush of anger, but as the heat of the moment fades, he's left with regret, realizing his overreaction wasn't worth it. This is the essence of impulsiveness, acting without rational thought or deliberation. To the Stoics, impulsiveness is a dangerous force that pulls us away from wisdom and virtue. It is the unrestrained reaction that bypasses reason, often leading to harm, regret, or missed opportunities for growth. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, understood this well. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, stop letting it be pulled by impulses." For Marcus, impulsiveness was the antithesis of a life guided by reason. To act on impulse is to surrender control, allowing emotions and fleeting desires to dictate our behavior rather than deliberate, thoughtful decision-making. In modern life, impulsiveness often disguises itself as spontaneity or quick thinking, but the difference lies in intention. Impulsiveness is driven by unchecked emotion, anger, fear, greed, or desire, while true spontaneity still operates within the bounds of reason. Consider someone who impulsively spends money on things they don't need. Chasing the temporary high of retail therapy, the initial thrill is quickly replaced by guilt, financial strain, and cluttered closets. Contrast this with someone who, after careful consideration, decides to treat themselves within their budget. Both actions may look similar on the surface, but the latter is rooted in deliberation and self-control. Stoicism teaches us to counter impulsiveness with a deliberate pause, a moment to engage the rational mind before acting. This practice is known as premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. By visualizing potential challenges and preparing our responses ahead of time, we can approach life's surprises with calm and clarity. Imagine being in a heated argument. Instead of blurting out the first angry thought that comes to mind, a Stoic might pause and ask themselves, will this response align with my values? Is it necessary? Will it contribute to a resolution or fuel the fire? This moment of reflection transforms a potential outburst into an opportunity for wisdom. This is the essence of arrogance as seen through the lens of Stoicism, an inflated sense of self-importance that stifles learning. As the challenge, of course, is that impulsiveness often feels justified in the moment. "I couldn't help myself" becomes an easy excuse. But the truth is, we always have a choice. Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This perspective shifts the power back into our hands, teaching us that we can choose to act with patience, reason, and intention. But what happens when impulsiveness isn't just an internal struggle, but manifests as arrogance, a refusal to listen, learn, or acknowledge our own flaws? In the next section, we'll explore how arrogance, another hallmark of foolishness, undermines wisdom and stifles personal growth. Stoic arrogance. Imagine a young man who believes he already knows everything there is to know. He walks into a room full of seasoned experts but refuses to listen to their insights. Instead, he boasts about his achievements, dismisses differing opinions, and scoffs at advice. His arrogance blinds him to the wealth of knowledge surrounding him, leaving him stagnant while others grow. Self-improvement and wisdom. To the Stoics, arrogance is a form of ignorance, a refusal to acknowledge one's limitations and a failure to embrace the humility necessary for growth. Epictetus warned of the dangers of arrogance, stating, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." Arrogance creates a barrier between ourselves and the truth, locking us into a narrow perspective that prevents us from seeing the world as it truly is. The wise person, in contrast, remains a perpetual student of life, always open to new lessons, even from unexpected sources. In today's world, arrogance often manifests in the need to always be right. Think of a colleague who shuts down discussions, unwilling to entertain alternate viewpoints, or someone who refuses to admit they've made a mistake. This behavior not only alienates others, but also keeps the arrogant person trapped in a cycle of self-deception. The Stoics would argue that such a mindset is a recipe for unhappiness, because it disconnects us from reality, the very foundation of a virtuous life. Arrogance also thrives in the age of social media, where carefully curated profiles and inflated opinions can create an illusion of superiority. The Stoics would remind us that external validation, likes, followers, or accolades has no bearing on our true worth. What matters is our character, our actions, and our ability to remain humble in the face of life's complexities. To overcome arrogance, the Stoics teach us the value of humility. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men of his time, regularly reminded himself of his own mortality and imperfections. In his meditations, he wrote, "Do not be satisfied with only avoiding arrogance. Strive to root it out entirely." True wisdom comes from recognizing how much there is to learn, not from pretending to have all the answers. Practical Stoic exercises, such as regularly reflecting on one's mistakes or seeking Feedback from trusted mentors can help dismantle arrogance. By admitting that we don't have all the answers, we create space for growth and connection, allowing us to navigate life with greater clarity and wisdom. But arrogance doesn't just prevent us from learning, it also makes it nearly impossible to handle feedback or criticism. In the next section, we'll explore how an inability to accept criticism not only hinders growth but also reinforces the very ignorance and arrogance that Stoicism seeks to eliminate, or inability to handle criticism. Picture a sculptor working tirelessly on a block of marble. As he chisels away, a fellow artist walks by and says, "The proportions seem a bit off. Perhaps you should refine the shoulders." The sculptor, feeling his ego bruised, scoffs, "What do you know about my art? Leave me be!" Refusing to consider the advice, he finishes the sculpture, only to later realize the flaw was obvious to everyone but himself. This scenario captures the essence of an inability to handle criticism, a rejection of feedback that stunts growth and self-improvement. The Stoics believed that criticism, when delivered in good faith, is a gift. It is an opportunity to refine ourselves, much like a sculptor refines their masterpiece. But to benefit from it, we must be willing to set aside our pride and see feedback for what it truly is, a tool for self-betterment. Epictetus taught, "If someone points out your faults, don't be upset. Instead, reflect on whether they are right." This advice reminds us that criticism, no matter how uncomfortable, can illuminate areas where we have strayed from reason, virtue, or alignment with nature. But when we reject criticism outright, we deny ourselves the chance to learn, grow, and become better versions of ourselves. In today's world, an aversion to criticism often manifests as defensiveness or dismissiveness. Think of the employee who refuses to accept constructive feedback, viewing it as a personal attack, or the friend who lashes out when their behavior is called into question. Such reactions stem from ego and insecurity, both of which cloud our judgment and hinder our ability to improve. Social media amplifies this tendency, where public criticism can feel harsh or even humiliating. However, the Stoics would argue that it's not the critique itself that harms us, it's our perception of it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If an action is just, do not avoid it. If it is unjust, why be angered by criticism of it?" This perspective shifts the focus from external validation to internal integrity. If the feedback is valid, it's a chance to grow. If it's not, it's an opportunity to practice patience and self-restraint. To handle criticism well, we must cultivate humility and a willingness to listen. Instead of reacting defensively, pause and ask yourself, is there truth in this feedback? How can I use it to become better? Even harsh or poorly delivered, criticism can carry a kernel of wisdom if we approach it with an open mind. The Stoics also teach us to detach from the emotional sting of criticism by practicing self-awareness. When we know our values, intentions, and goals, we are less likely to take feedback personally and more likely to use it constructively. But what happens when the inability to handle criticism evolves into something even more insidious? Blaming others for our shortcomings? In the next section, we'll delve into how shifting responsibility to others not only undermines personal accountability, but also keeps us from living a truly virtuous life. Blaming others. Imagine a captain steering a ship through rough seas. A sudden storm batters the vessel, and the crew scrambles to follow orders. But instead of taking command and guiding his crew to safety, the captain starts pointing fingers. "The navigator failed to warn me. The crew isn't working hard enough." His refusal to accept responsibility not only sows chaos but also puts the entire ship in jeopardy. This is the essence of blaming others, the avoidance of responsibility and accountability. In Stoic philosophy, such behavior is a hallmark of foolishness. The Stoics believed that blaming external forces, whether people, circumstances, or fate, reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of life. At its core, it's a failure to recognize the one thing we truly control, our own actions and responses. Epictetus reminds us, it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When we blame others, we shift our focus away from what we can control and surrender our power to external forces. This mindset not only stifles personal growth but also creates a life of perpetual frustration as we continually look outward for solutions to problems that require inward reflection. In today's world, blaming others is often disguised as self-preservation. Consider the employee who misses a deadline and immediately claims, "It's because my manager didn't give me enough time." Or the friend who loses their temper and says, "You made me act this way." While these justifications may provide temporary relief, they prevent us from confronting the real issue, our own choices and behavior. The Stoics teach that true strength lies in accepting responsibility, even when it's uncomfortable. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on his own role as a leader, wrote, "You must accept the truth, blame yourself or blame no one." This isn't about self-punishment, but about recognizing that personal accountability is the foundation of growth. When we stop blaming others, we regain control over our lives. We see challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities to strengthen our character and practice virtue. Of course, taking responsibility doesn't mean ignoring the role of others in our lives. It means understanding the balance between external influences and our internal response. Even if someone else contributes to a problem, our reaction, whether it's to learn, adapt, or grow, is entirely within our control. To break the cycle of blame, we must cultivate self-awareness. When faced with a challenge, pause and ask, "What role did I play in this situation? What can I do to improve or prevent it in the future?" By shifting the focus inward, we take ownership of our lives and empower ourselves to change. But there's another trap that often accompanies blame: the relentless pursuit of superficial goals. When we chase after wealth, fame, or pleasure at the expense of inner virtue, we lose sight of what truly matters. In the next section, we'll explore how this misguided pursuit leads to emptiness and how Stoicism guides us back to a life of meaning. 6. Pursuit of superficial goals. Picture a man who spends his entire life climbing a mountain, believing there's a treasure chest waiting at the summit. He sacrifices relationships, health, and peace of mind to scale the rocky terrain. Finally, he reaches the top only to find the chest empty, exhausted and disillusioned. He realizes the journey was in vain, because he chased something that could never truly fulfill him. This is the danger of prioritizing superficial goals, pursuing external validations like wealth, fame, or status while neglecting inner virtue and lasting fulfillment. To the Stoics, this kind of pursuit is not only misguided but also a major source of unhappiness. Epictetus put it simply, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Superficial goals often lure us with the promise of happiness, but they're fleeting by nature. Wealth can be lost, fame can fade, and status can crumble. The Stoics taught that true contentment doesn't come from accumulating external rewards, but from cultivating inner qualities like wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. Think about the modern obsession with social media. Many people measure their worth by likes, followers, or the illusion of a perfect lifestyle. They spend hours curating their profiles, chasing virtual applause and comparing themselves to others. Yet despite the facade, many feel empty, anxious, and disconnected. Why? Because they've placed their happiness in things outside their control, things that the Stoics would call externals. Marcus Aurelius warned against this trap in his Meditations, writing, "Do not dream of possession of anything which requires others to value it." To the Stoics, such pursuits are unstable foundations for a meaningful life. Instead, they urge us to turn inward and ask, what kind of person am I becoming? Am I living in alignment with my values? Am I prioritizing what is good for my character over what pleases my ego? This doesn't mean the Stoics dismissed wealth or success entirely. They recognize that these things can be useful if they're handled with wisdom and don't compromise our integrity. The key is to treat them as tools rather than ultimate goals. Wealth, for example, can be used to help others or support meaningful endeavors, but it should never define our worth. To break free from the pursuit of superficial goals, the Stoics recommend practicing memento mori, the meditation on mortality. Reflecting on the brevity of life helps us focus on what truly matters, living with virtue, strengthening our relationships, and contributing to the greater good. When we align our actions with these deeper values, we find a sense of purpose that no external reward can provide. As we reflect on these 6 signs of a foolish mind: ignorance, impulsiveness, arrogance, inability to handle criticism, blaming others, and the pursuit of superficial goals, we uncover a deeper truth. Foolishness isn't about intelligence or lack of education. It's about a failure to live in alignment with reason, humility, and virtue. The Stoics understood that wisdom is not something we are born with, It's something we cultivate daily through self-awareness, reflection, and deliberate action. Each of these traits pulls us away from what the Stoics called the good life, a life guided by virtue, resilience, and purpose. But here's the good news. The journey toward wisdom is always within reach. By recognizing these signs in ourselves, we take the first step toward transformation. Ignorance can be replaced with self-awareness, impulsiveness with patience, and arrogance with humility. We can learn to accept criticism as a gift, take responsibility for our actions, and prioritize what truly matters over fleeting rewards. The wisdom of the Stoics reminds us that we are not defined by our mistakes or weaknesses, but by our willingness to grow. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." So how will you apply these lessons in your life? Take a moment to reflect on one area where you might be falling into one of these traps. Maybe it's reacting impulsively to challenges or focusing too much on external validations. Whatever it is, commit today to making a small change, one that aligns with your values and helps you move closer to wisdom. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Stoic-inspired content that helps you live a stronger, wiser, and more purposeful life. Share this video with someone who might need these reminders, and let's grow together as a community of modern Stoics. And remember, as the Stoics taught, the path to wisdom is not a destination, it's a daily practice. Until next time, stay grounded, stay humble, and strive to live with virtue.